guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to give you a little review of my iPad Air because I have been using this at university for the past year. I do get a lot of messages of people asking me, is it worth it? Do I really need an iPad at university? Should I spend the money? So today I kind of wanted to give you an overview of how I use my iPad and then give you some pros and cons. So if you're considering buying an iPad, you can kind of make a more informed decision about whether or not you need to get an iPad for university. Before I even start the video, I do want to say, I always say this, you don't need an iPad for university. It is absolutely not essential. However, I say it's a nice addition to have if you have the budget for it. So before I get into today's video, I wanted to tell you about Datacamp, who are kindly sponsoring this video. Datacamp are an amazing platform that allow anybody to learn data skills online at your own pace using a range of different interactive courses. You don't need any previous experience in data sciences, and there are courses ranging from all different skill levels, from the basics of data science all the way through to courses in Python, R and SQL. You don't need to download any software. You can literally learn from your internet browser, and there are over 350 courses to choose from. You can even take a free assessment which gives you a personalized learning recommendation to allow you to grow your data skills even more. And you can try the first chapter of any course for free. I wanted to partner up with Datacamp because during my biology degree I actually had to learn R coding for my bioinformatics modules, and I really struggled because coding was completely new to me, and at the time I signed up for the beginners course in R on Datacamp, and it really did give me that confidence boost. So if any of you guys out there are at university, maybe on a STEM course and are learning coding, I really would recommend using Datacamp to get yourself started. Even if you are confident with coding, there are more advanced courses available for you to develop your skills even further. I really recommend checking out Datacamp, and I will leave a link in the description for you to go and have a look for yourself. Thanks again to Datacamp for sponsoring this video. I have got the iPad Air 3rd generation. It's 64GB, and a lot of people do ask me, is that enough storage to have if you're going to be using your iPad for university? Currently for me it's more than enough. I still have about 20GB available, which might become a problem further down the line because I'm going to be using it for quite a few years. So you could invest in the kind of higher storage iPad model, but obviously you will pay more money for that. I also have the Apple Pencil, which I believe is the 2nd generation one. So last summer when I bought my iPad, Apple were doing a student discount deal where with any iPad purchase you could get AirPods for free. So I got the iPad, the Apple Pencil and the AirPods for £535, which is a lot of money, but actually that's quite a good price for everything that I got in that deal. So definitely look out for any student deals that Apple are doing. They tend to do them around August and September time, which is about the time people are preparing to go to university. And then I just got this case off Amazon. It's just the cheapest one I could find with a pencil holder. It does the job. I like the fact that it covers the screen. It's nothing that pretty or special, but by the time I spent £535 I was looking for any kind of budget item to cover up my iPad. I don't currently have a screen protector. Please don't get angry at me. When I do finally get a screen protector, I really want to try one of the paper-like ones that feel like paper when you're writing on them. But yeah, I would recommend getting a screen protector. I'm just really silly. So that is the overview of my iPad, and now I want to show you all of the ways that I've been using the iPad this year at university and show you some of my favourite apps as well. Okay, so here is my iPad. If we go to the home screen, I have got a lot of the kind of basic Apple apps. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really use many of these. Occasionally I will use FaceTime. Sometimes I'll use the camera if I want to take pictures of a lecture slide in front of me or something like that. But really, I don't really tend to use this page. I do sometimes use Google Calendar actually. But yeah, if I take you to this page, this is where all the apps I actually use are. So I've got social media. I don't really tend to use the iPad to go on these apps, but I just have them here anyway if I need some kind of distraction. And then I do have a TV folder because the iPad quality is really good for watching things. I do tend to normally still watch things on my laptop, but sometimes I do prefer it on here because the picture quality is better even though the screen is smaller. Then I have this folder called Photoshop, which is just a couple of different apps that I use sometimes for like making thumbnails or editing photos. And then this is one of my more commonly used folders. This is my anatomy folder. I have two anatomy atlases. One is Complete Anatomy, which I downloaded and then didn't end up paying for because I got this one for free with the university. It's called Visible Body. I don't currently have access to it because it expired and I have to sign up again next year, but I will have that one again next year for free. And then Teach Me Anatomy I've got, which I really like. It's just so simple and easy to understand. Everything is laid out for you. You can also get all this information off Google, but it is nice to have it on the iPad in an app, just so I can reference things quickly. Then I've got this productivity folder, which is a bit random. It's got EndNote, which I use when I'm writing essays. It's just for referencing. I've got Forest, which I have on my iPad, but I do tend to use more on my phone, because normally if I'm working on my iPad, so I wouldn't want to block out my iPad. I have the My Southampton app, which is basically where you can get your timetable, or you can book gym sessions, you can just access maps from the university and things like that, so it's quite handy to have. And then I've got Procreate, which I use sometimes mainly for YouTube things and artwork, like this little drawing I did. But I actually really think that Procreate is worth the £10 investment, because it is one of my favourite apps to use on here. And then down at the bottom along here are my most used apps. So we've got Safari, 2 email apps. I've got Outlook for my university emails and Gmail for my personal emails. I've got iMessage, I've got Spotify, and I've got Google Drive. And then the most important app on my iPad is GoodNotes 5, because I use this literally every day at university. So I've organised all of my modules into folders. So for example, if you go into locomotor module, and then if we go into the anatomy folder, for example, I've got anatomy lectures, and then some of the tutorial files, plus a couple of lecture slides. And that is basically how I organise everything on GoodNotes. One of the best things about GoodNotes is you can literally just open up 2 sets of notes at once. So for example, here's some tutorial questions, and then if I wanted to have the lecture up next to it, I can do that. I just really love GoodNotes, and I tend to use dark mode, although towards the end of the year I got bored with dark mode and switched to light mode, so I'll show you light mode as well. So yeah, I used light mode at the end of the year, and I tend to use the square paper. I don't know why, I just prefer square paper to lined paper. If you are interested on how I make notes, I'll link that video below, because my note-taking process is pretty simple, but I've already spoken about it, so I won't talk about it today. And yeah, so that is GoodNotes, my most used app. So now I want to talk to you about the pros and cons of having an iPad at university. The main reason I bought the iPad was purely for note taking, and really that is the main thing I use it for. I much prefer taking notes on the iPad to when I was taking them on my laptop or on pen and paper. One of the main advantages to having an iPad is that you can annotate directly onto lecture slides. I used to spend so much money on printing because I really liked having the lecture slides out in front of me, and I like to scribble on the paper and just kind of annotate as I went. Now I can literally just download the lecture slide or the PDF and import it into GoodNotes, and then I can annotate it directly onto the iPad. I also really love that you can do a dual screen on the iPad. It really helps when I need to either watch a video while I'm taking notes, or I want to have the lecture slides and my own notes next to it. Also, I just think my notes are more attractive and pretty, which I know isn't essential for notes at university, but as somebody who used to start notes again and again and again because I didn't like the way they looked, for me it's just so much better to be able to quickly rub something out and start again, or change the colour of something, or move it around the page. Also, I hate in the lecture where they just go off on a tangent and you don't know where your notes are going to end up, if that makes sense. So this gives you the chance to be able to move things around. Another pro is having all the notes in one place. I used to have so many notebooks and folders full of paper, and I would lose things a lot because I'm just really good at losing bits of paper and not organising them properly. But I don't have any excuses now. Everything is in one place in GoodNotes. Everything is organised, and I can literally just search if I need to find something. So I haven't lost any notes this year, which is really good. Another point is that all notes are backed up to the cloud, so even if you lose the iPad, you still have the notes. Obviously I'd be devastated if I lost the iPad, but the notes are even more important, to be honest. Also, just the ability to be able to quickly airdrop things from my laptop onto the iPad. Sharing things around with other people is really easy. If I want to get a file quickly, a tutorial, I can just grab it straight from my laptop and airdrop it onto my iPad. So yeah, those are my favourite things about the iPad. And then moving on to cons about the iPad, obviously main issue is that it is really expensive. It's almost as much money as a MacBook. If you go for the Pro, you are pretty much paying the same as a MacBook. So it is just a big investment. I think the biggest thing to remember is it is not a replacement for a laptop or a computer. You absolutely still need a computer, especially if you're going to be writing lots of essays at university, or like me, you're going to be using things like iMovie for editing videos. To me, the iPad is an extension of my laptop, not the other way around, so that is a con. You are going to have two bits of technology. Another thing I don't particularly like about the iPad is I don't find it that useful to use as a planner. I still like to have a diary. Some people do use it in that way, but for me, I still like to plan things written down in a diary or on a calendar. I just like it the old-fashioned way. And I also think like nothing really can beat pen and paper from time to time. I've literally got this notebook right here. I just love pen and paper. For me, it's not a complete replacement of pen and paper, and occasionally I find myself wanting to just write on paper. And I will say the Apple Pencil gives me hand cramp. If you're writing for a long time with the Apple Pencil, it is slightly heavier for me than a real pen, so I do get like quite a painful hand if I've been writing notes for a long time. Also, I would say another negative of the iPad is that it does up your screen time quite a lot, because when you would normally be looking at a piece of paper, you are now looking at a screen, so you are going to be upping your screen time. And I ended up investing in blue light glasses. Don't know if they actually work, but I felt like I was really looking at screens a lot more than I used to, so I did have to invest in a pair of blue light glasses. It's not a massive deal to me to up my screen time, but it is just something to consider. I think those are my main thoughts on what's good and what's bad about the iPad. If you do have any other questions about the iPad, then do leave them below or send me a message on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!